Welcome to A Paycheck Away. It's Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to all who celebrate and thank you for your service. I'm sitting next to somebody who did serve as well. Stan Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Salaam. It's really good to see you again.
We are in a fun week right now, post-election.
Post-election, yeah.
Virginia, and for people who don't know, Stan the Man, as he's known around these parts, is a former candidate for office. When was that?
I ran for the state senate in the 4th district in 2019, and then ran again for the House in what was then the 57th in 2021.
A repeat offender.
Yeah. I lost the coin toss twice.
Oh man! All right.
No, I did that because, I'm one of those folks that believes we need to have a candidate in every district. And for the longest time, Democrats didn't run in these red districts. And I wanted to have a couple goals, force the other guy to spend some money, build a party. So, we built data sets by knocking on doors and things like that.
Okay.
So
you're playing chess.
Playing chess, it's a long game. Demographics are changing. And we wanted to try to meet some of the new folks who are moving into those districts and greet them and say, hey, you're not the only Democrat.
So we're seeing the needle move.
The needle's moving.
Yeah. And we saw that pretty significantly in this election that just happened last week. 64 Democrats in the House of Delegates.
It was a huge blue wave. I think there's a lot of things going on here. Demographic change, I just mentioned, is one of those things. I think that frustration with the Trump administration is also huge. And this is something Virginia is known for. Those of you who live in Virginia and have for a while, you'll remember it's not unusual for the party that wins the presidency to then lose the governor's seat the next time.
It's so weird.
Well,
what if you're doing like a really good job as a president and the governor's so close?
Well, that doesn't always happen.
Okay.
It's typical. And I think that cycle actually broke in 2009 when Obama was president.
Okay.
Right? I can't remember, but it did when Northam broke that cycle. When Northam won, we had a Democrat president, right? So he broke that cycle. And then I think, that would have been 2017.
Right.
No, 2017 was Northam. The 2013 would have been, that would have been the cycle. So the upshot is that, and as a political scientist, I can tell you that it's normal. One of the reasons people split ballots is because they're worried about one party controlling the whole government, right? So people will vote for a Democrat for president or vice versa, and then they'll vote the other for Senate or for House of Representatives, especially.
Okay.
And they do that because they like having this guy in charge of the presidency, but they don't want to give him too much power.
Okay.
Right? And so I think that's a lot of what's happening in Virginia when that happens. Now, this is a special case because Trump is so unpopular and his policies are so unpopular. I think you can take a little bit of this 64 thing result with a grain of salt because the ICE stuff is really, really bothering people. That makes even people who want immigration policy to change, the way they're doing it makes people very, very, it's un-American and people feel that.
Immoral.
It's immoral, it's un-American, and people can feel that even though they like the idea of the better policy. Another thing is that his policies in the last year have so affected Virginia workers and Virginia economy with the whole riff of federal workers. We may get into that a little more when we talk about the shutdown.
Right.
And the way they're in.
And for viewers who aren't familiar with the term RIF, that's a reduction in force. It's pretty much firing federal employees. And Virginia has a lot of federal employees, especially in Virginia. But in our congressional district, we have a lot in Williamsburg, Jamestown, right. NASA, for example.
Yeah, in a former life, I worked on economic development in Virginia around federal spending in the economy, right? Mostly military spending, but also general federal spending. And at the time, this was, back in 2011, 2012, the federal government spent something like $68 billion a year in Virginia in payroll and contracts and all those things. And that's higher, which tells you a lot. So ripping these government workers, and it does a bunch of things to the Virginia economy. First of all, these people are relatively highly paid. So these are six-figure workers, right? So they're the ones that are driving up housing prices in Northern Virginia, in Arlington. But they also support cafes and coffee shops like the one we're sitting in now, right?
Furlow's Cafe.
Furlow's Cafe, yeah. And it's my first time here, and I have to tell you that come try the Turkish coffee over some.
They literally
very, very good.
It's awesome. It's really cool.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good review from So there's a lot of things going on here, but that's a really crazy result. But I think demographic changes also have something to do with this, because the population's younger, population's bluer. People are moving into, we see this. I helped Scott Conifacek in the 59th district this year,
aka Scott Ken.
Scott K. And he moved the needle, and part of that's because younger people are moving out into Hanover counties and the part of Henrico County that's in that district because of development. They're building a lot.
And affordability too.
It's affordable, and putting away Scott's additions by. So working downtown Richmond, southern Hanover County, the Kansas area, the 301 corridor are good places to live, and they're building a lot of apartment buildings there. So the demographics are slowly changing.
That's about a 30-minute commute down there.
If that, it depends on the time of the day, obviously. Like maybe it doesn't anywhere, but you're talking 30 minutes.
Yeah,
and there's actually an express bus line that you can go from. You can take not from Mechanicsville, but on Para Road. There's a bus stop, and it takes you straight downtown to 9th Street. So you can, and they're free. Buses are free.
Fast and free?
Yeah.
Where have I heard that before? Yeah. All right, okay.
Yeah, we talk about that too because the whole Mamadani thing is going to come up here because it's very, very much demonizing that guy, and I'm on board with his program. I mean, I'm ranting here, but I think Democrats have to start thinking about younger people and the way younger people think and what they're looking for and what they're facing in their lived experience day to day.
Especially considering so much of our congressional, overall, those who are elected in there are skewing towards 80. Like that average age shouldn't be so high.
Yeah.
Like we think about the founders of the country, they were in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, right.
When they made this country. And so, as a 39-year-old running for Congress, when I think about the founders, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old. Running for Congress. Yeah. And then wait, there's a 70-year-old right there, right? Like, what do they think? How do they maintain their seat? Because running for Congress is excruciatingly hard.
That's a hill I've yet to try to climb. Although the other day, when I thought Mark Warner had came. I posted on Facebook that if Mark Warner voted to hit the shutdown under that deal, I would seriously consider a primary challenge. About a dozen people I know say, "Go stand, do it." I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that. Somebody needs to, and it needs to be someone younger. Because I turned 69 in a couple months.
You look great, man.
I appreciate that, but military service will help with that. I mean, all that physical activity and living a healthy life for all those years put me in a good spot. I hurt like a lot of 60-year-olds. Arthritis is a thing, but I'm walking around in a lot of folks might not. But I think the Democratic Party is a youth movement. Very happy to see closer to. A lot of these other folks need to. They've been in Congress for 20 years or 30 years. They need to hand over the reins. And I had hoped we were getting there with Obama. But that didn't seem to happen.
I think what we see with those who are so much older, they're always, rather than maybe probably all of us, for sure, they're always surrounded by yes people who just shield them from all criticism. I think they're the best person to walk on earth. Like, you've seen it. If you go to Congress, you'll see a gaggle of people around Chuck Schumer. You'll see a gaggle of people around whoever, everybody, Democrats, Republicans. And that is a protective insulation around the. So they never get that criticism of, hey, you need to step down, you need to retire. All they hear, oh, you're the best thing since Jesus. So that's why I think that it's just the time. I think it's negative.
I have to tell you, if you've ever run for office, and you're probably starting to feel this too, right? If you've ever run for office, and it was especially true, I think, for me, because I was running in red districts where they had never had a candidate, or it had been a long time since they had a candidate. And they were so happy to have someone running. I got a lot of attention, and I can tell you that can be had it for me. As it were, you know?
Meaning what?
Well, meaning like it feels good when people are coming up to you and telling you you're doing something good for us. Thank you for doing this, and they're thanking me all the time. And I can see where if you actually won this seat and got in power, and you go around to the different committee meetings and to different events and talk to people, and you're constantly hearing this feedback, thanks for all the great things you're doing, it would be a little difficult to give that up. Right? Psychologically, I kind of understand that part of it from these folks. At the same time, I think, and this was one of the big problems with Biden, I think, was that Joe Biden still lives in a world when people with very divergent views on what life ought to look like worked together. Right?
And he may have been the last senator in his 30s.
Yeah.
Right.
And so so you had segregationists working with liberal Republicans in the North, and sometime we ought to sit down and do this and talk about the rise of Republicans in the South, in the American South, right? Because that's a subject all by itself, right? But the norms today, the norms and understandings that people, especially in the Senate, also in the House, and the presidency, have changed, right? And this is my main criticism of the deal they made to end the shutdown yesterday or today, is that they're still assuming that they can negotiate with someone like Donald Trump. And I understand the need, and my good friend Andrew Ward, who ran in Hannah County, I think in the 56th district, he pointed out that we had to do something about food and starvation. As people who get these SNAP benefits, people are hurting, and Trump is not, because Republicans don't want these people to hurt. So you had to do something to make sure these people get fed.
Yeah, the Cato Institute, a Republican think. They're pushing for SNAP to be a state-run thing entirely. They're trying to be defederalize these programs. So that I saw that come out. Yeah.
Well, I think there's something to be said for pushing down some of these federal programs into the states, and taxation into the states. But the problem there is you might have a great program in Massachusetts, but kids in Texas are starving.
No, absolutely.
Right. So, and honestly, folks, I tell you, I'm a historian. I'm a political scientist. I've been studying this stuff since I enlisted in the Army in the early days. And I grew up in Mississippi and Arkansas, and I can, I came from that side of things. I was in the 6th grade in the school I was in, desegregated, and that was in what, 1970?
Yes. Okay.
Right. So that's pretty late for doing that. This is in Mississippi, and the reason we federalized so much of this stuff, things like Title IX for women in colleges, and things like these food programs and the social, what Scott and I like to call social infrastructure, right? Not social safety net, social infrastructure, right? And we had to federalize this because states like Mississippi were doing a pretty good job of taking care of some people, but not such a good job of taking care of other people. And I think you can guess which people I'm talking about, right? People who look more like me got a pretty good deal. People who look more like you, maybe that's what I'm right. So if you push that stuff back down to the states, it sounds like a good idea, and I'm sympathetic to thinking about it. Mm-hmm. But you end up with this wildly divergent places. I mean, Mississippi was a state with Jim Crow laws that I mean, they tried to recreate slavery, literally. So I'm not sure giving them the keys to the food pantry is a good idea.
And that's what it comes down to. That's why this whole idea of states' rights doesn't jive well when you're thinking about the social infrastructure that we have in this country. There are people who want to make programs harder for people of color, especially for people with disabilities, for veterans, for homeless folks, for older folks, to not be able to get these programs. And we actually saw that manifest in the Big Beautiful Bill.
Yep.
There were provisions, for example, in SNAP, where people who were homeless, or veterans, and people who were older were exempt. I'm sorry, no, people who were former faculty, not old, who were exempt from the work requirements. And the Republicans who took that away.
Yeah.
And that's like the most cruelest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
For the longest time, veterans were a protected class. Like, you do not mess with veterans, leave them aside. But when they pulled the rug on veterans and that, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
We're some bad times.
Well, the project, I think the project on the Republican side at this point, there's certainly a racism you can see that in these things, because they're not patrolling the neighborhood out there. Yeah, right. But I think the project at the end of the day, we'll want to talk about the rise of oligarchs. Yeah, right. The Peter Thiels and Andreessens, and how it looks a lot like these folks are trying to destroy the state because the state is the only counter to it.
I mean, we got tech feudalism coming, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's looking that way. And Scott Kay and I, we do a podcast called Foggy Bottom Line, and we did,
as you can see, because they have merch.
Yeah,
at a paycheck away, we do not have merch.
You need to get merch.
We gotta get merch. Yeah, we do.
I don't have a lot of merch, but if you want one of these, let me know and I'll get you. But we did a podcast episode about affordability, right? And this is part of the reason why younger people, I'd like to see younger people get more involved in politics, because they bring a lived experience I don't have. I didn't have $100,000 in student loans when I got out when I got to college, largely because the Army paid for me.
I wish I had $100,000 in student. Yeah, I have $260,000.
Yeah, and that, folks, is ridiculous. And if you're a capitalist, right? If you're a capitalist, you have to worry about it, because folks like Salaam here and other folks in your age cohort and younger, they're
23, in case anybody laughs.
He's 23. They're coming out of the education process with negative capital. Yes. Negative capital, which means they can't start a business. They can't do anything. And if they don't have health insurance, I was lucky because after I retired from the Army, I had the Army retirement health care, which meant I didn't have to hold a job just to get health insurance, right? So I could start a business, which I did. Okay. Wasn't super successful, but I didn't have to take a corporate job or a job greeting at Walmart just to get health.
Right. And that's a big phrase. That's like the new form of slavery, where if you're beholden to these corporations or pay for health insurance.
Right.
And with Walmart, they actually mess with the hours you get, so that you never have health run,
right?
So that they don't actually have to go to the thing.
Right.
So it's real. It's awful what's out. So that's why I left my job to run for Congress, and so I left health insurance. I had my wife and I applied to Ford. Now there's the Ford Care that's out there. So we are now, and our kids are looking medical. So it's like, I'm just figuring out it now. There's something. Yeah. And so I am very alone. It's about the Southeast going away. So that's why a big part of my platform is healthcare for all.
And remind me to share with you, because when I helped Costume, our friend Costume, when he ran for Congress here, so he moved to Chicago, and one of the things I did for him was an analysis of the Medicare policy. This thing's 800 pages. But this is the direction we need to go on healthcare in this country. Is something like the Medicare for All bill. There's some problems with it. But at the end of the day, it makes sure everyone gets health care insurance, or really health care, like point of service free health care, paid for by tax dollars. This actually saves us money. Okay, it saves us money in all kinds of ways. Yeah, I read the whole thing, and I did a 15 pages of an analysis of what it would do. And the only organizations, the only people who lose are the health insurance.
Maybe that.
Right? That's the only people that lose. So if you hate your health insurance company, you should be pushing for a Medicare for all, because
Don't sign me with a good time.
because that's where we need to go. And one of us or both of us should do a show sometime about it.
Yeah.
Because that's a great discussion. A lot of people don't understand it because they think of the British National Health Service. They think of Canadian, and yeah, it's true in some senses that wait times for some procedures that be long, right? But
you know why? You know why the root of that is? It's the systemic defunding of the program that's happening. And we see that in America with the IRS. Like, the IRS is a great organization. People like us, we love paying our taxes because look what we get. We get a lot from paying our taxes. But what happens in this country is that Republicans will fight funding from IRS. And then the next year they're like, oh, the IRS can't even do their job.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes this self-perpetuating machine of defunding the IRS until it's gone.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on with the NHS in England,
Yes,
other
absolutely.
universal health cares around the country, where this thing is creeping in to say, let's cut it so that we can privatize, cut and privatize. And then we see what we have here with health insurance. We are essentially a monthly ATM for health insurance CEOs.
Yeah, totally.
And somehow people are cool with that. So I think once we can change that framing so that people understand, oh, you're giving $1,300 a month just so John Henry at the top of the jail can get a yacht.
Yeah.
But what if you had a system where you're putting in less than $1,300 a month and your neighbor can go see it on? How about that?
Well, and one of the interesting developments in the last few days has been, the Republican criticism of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, has suddenly morphed into this money is going to insurance companies. So Republicans are now attacking the insurance companies, which is very interesting. That's a very interesting development. And if your brain is Republican, I'm not sure where that takes you. Right? Because if you're saying, well, let's just give the money to Americans, well, that sounds good, but you're going to have to spend it on health insurance or health care. Right? So it ends up in
that's an offer on the too. They're saying, let's just give the money to the people, but not change the system at all. Right?
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
So that's like, come on, guys.
Well, and money is fungible, and honestly, I guess if you gave me the money, straight up, I'm retired, I'm on Medicare. But if you gave me a certain amount of money on lieu of that Medicare, then I could use it to buy a car, right? And say, screw the healthcare. And then someone else has to pay when I have to go to the emergency room, right? Because I can't afford it. And then medical bankruptcy, which is crazy in a wealthy country like this.
What a phrase. These two words don't go together in any other country in the world, in just America.
Yeah.
We can have medical debt and medical bankruptcy.
It's ridiculous that you go to college, you get a law degree or a political science degree, whatever you do. You've got a little student.
I have both.
Show off. You do everything.
Let me show you my bank account.
That's not the size of the bank account is not the best way to measure someone's wealth. Trust me.
Oh, well, thank you.
But I know that from personal experience. But you go to school, you get degrees, you get a good job, you do all the right things. You get married, you have a couple kids, you're living the American dream, you buy your first house, and then your wife gets pregnant.
That story took a turn.
Yeah, and
I was enjoying this.
Everything's going great, and then someone in the family gets sick, or a child gets sick, right? Leukemia, right? And now you never know. And I've been lucky. So far, you've been lucky, but a lot of people are not so lucky. And when we talk about socialism, and I'll throw that big word out there, this is the kind of thing we need to socialize in this country. We need to help each other. And what the only thing we're really socialized right now, the United States is a socialist country.
That's it. What?
This is a socialist country. But what we socialize is corporate failure.
Oh, fair. That's fair.
Right? We're not socializing food support for hungry people. We're not socializing housing support for the homeless. We're not socializing medical care for people who have, debilitating diseases or injuries. We're socializing corporate failure, because when corporations fail, someone bails them, and it's often us, the taxpayers. And all you those of you old enough to remember 2007, 2008, those big banks, that was socialism. Yeah. So bailing them out. Now, I think in some level it hadn't done, but it's socialism, and the other kind of socialism, the socialism for regular workers, kind of has to be done too.
What's the phrase? Socialism for the rich, rugged capitalism for the poor.
Now, there's a great quote. I think it's called Will Hoyt's law. This is an internet.
Okay.
All these internet traditions. This a guy named Will Hoyt, and if you Google Will Hoyt, Wilhoit, one of the results is an artist. That's not this guy. This guy, he just commented on a blog, right? And he was commenting on a blog post about corporatism, American society and all that. And he pointed out, he tried to define conservatism, okay? And his definition of conservatism was that, let me see if I can make sure I get this straight, that conservatism in America is the idea that there are laws, there are certain people that the laws bind, that do not protect. And other people, the law protects, but does not bind. Right? Real voice.
All right.
Oh, I'll say that again for those of you who might have missed it. So you don't have to read on. There are certain people, according to conservatives in the U.S. today, there are certain people that the law binds, they have to follow it. But when they get in trouble, it doesn't protect them. And other people that the law protects, but doesn't bind. So wealthy people get protection from the law, but they're not bound by it when they do things they're not supposed to do. They can buy their way out, right?
Yeah. For example, one of the billionaires was doing work on their house, and they didn't have the permits for the vehicles to be there, for any of the things to be done. And what they had to do is just pay a fine. And so all they do is pay the fine, and they continue to do the thing.
It's a cost of doing business,
right? Whereas that fine would have put any of us out of our homes. Yeah. It's just it's a friendship.
And if you control hundreds of millions of dollars in debt and wealth, right? And we have people in this country now who are approaching $1 trillion in wealth. One single person controlling that much money. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry. You can afford anything. Right?
Yep.
You can ignore the law, and then if it ever does come after you, you can just buy it.
You can afford anything.
I can't do that.
You can afford to buy anything except integrity.
Or immortality.
Yeah,
which is what some of them are trying to spy. That's a lot of what this AI says.
Yeah.
And the whole AI bubble is another big conversation we get always on that. And I'm here running in the first district. Congressional districts here in Virginia, one of the big issues that's coming up is the data centers, right? And these AI companies need these data centers, and these things are enormous. You can see these things from space, and they use electricity at crazy rates, and even worse than that, they're building these things in the western part of. Well, it's in the western part of Hanover County, Goochland County, very rural areas, which sounds good. These things suck water out of the ground like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, right.
And all those cool all these chips, right? All these computers. But everybody who lives out there is going, well. So when that aquifer starts going down, those wells dry up, and their way of life changes.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things to talk about, and I really appreciate you bringing me in here to chat a little bit this morning about this.
We're planting a lot of seeds. If anybody's got any questions for Stan Minute, feel free to type them in the chat, or you just think for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of veterans don't like they don't like it when people think it's for service because, uh, I I don't mind it personally. Some veterans feel veterans are typically very humble about it, right? And I tell when people tell me that, I usually respond with, at the time it seemed illogical to me to right. I mean, I was unemployed. It was 1982, and Reagan's recession, big recession on Reagan. I didn't have a good job, and I needed to find some self-discipline. I needed direction in life, and so I enlisted, 2-year enlistment, just to make some money to go back to college. And I got in there. I was a tank guy, so Army, and I got in the Army. I went to Germany. I decided I liked it. I was good at it, so I got promoted, and really the post-Vietnam war, because we were trying to fix it. It was broken. I mean, people throwing lieutenants out of windows in wall.
What?
Oh yeah. The Army was in bad shape.
Whoa.
Vietnam destroyed the United States. Just destroyed it. And when they shifted from the draft and went to the all-volunteer Army, and they started paying, this is literally what happened. The Army started paying smart people to enlist for things like infantry and tanks, right? So if you scored a certain level on the aptitude test, then you qualify for bonuses depending on your enlistment, things like that. So this really changed the way things work. When I first enlisted in the early 80s, you weren't going to make first sergeant if you had never been in a bar fight and never gotten a DUI.
Wow.
And that culture, I enlisted in 1982. By 1986, 87, that culture was completely different. That culture was gone. And it was a lot more about discipline, about good management, leadership, about core values, and stressing that kind of thing. So when people thank me for my service, I say at the time it seemed the logical thing to do for me. It worked for me. It's not for everyone. But if you're a young person right now and you're looking for direction, you're not sure what you want to do, I would urge you to explore the U.S. military. It's a bunch of great people. You'll find some great leadership. You'll learn leadership. I did, and I think for some people it can be a great thing. For others, not so much.
Got it. And as we wrap up here, Stan, you want to tell us a little bit about Foggy Bottom Line? What's that about?
I started a blog, Foggy Bottom Line, politics, economics, and other silly things. Really a long time ago. It didn't. The other silly things. Someday we'll get to the other silly things part, but politics is so important right now. But I came up with the Foggy Bottom Line thing. I was at George Washington University doing my international relations PhD at the time, and I was taking classes in Foggy Bottom, whether it's take. So that sounded interesting. But more importantly, one of the things I strongly believe is that answers to these big questions, what to do about healthcare, what to do about homeless people, what to do about oligarchs taking over the country and destroying the state. These are all big questions, but there's very rarely a black and white to it. Mostly these answers are in some gray area. They're fogged. The right answer is not clear, and we often have to try something and then adjust fire when it doesn't, right? And change it in a nuanced way or something. So that's where I came up with the name. But right now I'm doing some podcasts with Scott K. We do one of those a week. I do some spot reports. I did a spot report yesterday afternoon on the shutdown deal, right? I call them spot reports. In the Army, if you're on the battlefield, right, and you see an enemy vehicle, you send a spot report, right? And this is Black 7, this is Red 6, spot report over, and then you describe what this is. So I call it spot reports. But you can find us at www.foggybottomline.com. The links to the podcasts and some writing is there. We're on YouTube at Foggy Bottom Line Media. and we're on TikTok and Instagram, just at Foggy Mom. So,
I mean, based on Stan's experience, just a world of knowledge into these posts, into these spot reports, into these podcasts. Scott Key as well, also a veteran as well, and also an election Yoda as well. So really great duo coming together and sharing their insight, their perspective. So highly recommend Foggy Mom.
And really check Salaam out, because this is a great candidate for Congress. We have several candidates. It's a primary, and Salaam, we should talk offline about some things on that. But
shut it down. Shut it down.
but I think take a look at Salaam. Take a look at what you're doing is also very important. And I think I've been watching a lot of podcasts lately, just to try to see what they look like, so I can make mine better. And I think one of the great things about this proliferation of all these different podcasts is the different perspectives and knowledge different people have.
Yeah.
Right. And you have a perspective that 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and and coming from a different lived experience, different place, and that lived experience, that term sounds so woke, but folks, it's so important. So important to meet people where they are and in the perspective they have, and try to share that. This is an empathy we have that the other side did not have, right? Trying to understand the other end. It's super important for us to do that. But please check us out, subscribe, comment, let us know. I love me some constructive criticism. If the sound's not good, if the video's not good, if I stutter too much, tell me that, because we want to fix it, and we want to give you guys some insights. We want to try to teach analytical thinking. I'm working on a series of American politics lectures that would, and I'll be posting that on the website here shortly, the sort of list of those. But I want to talk about the history of the Constitution, right, and why it is, why it has these anti-democratic components like the Electoral College. I want to talk about what we just mentioned before, is this realignment, this racial realignment that happened in the South, where all the Democrats became Republicans, right, and Republicans in the North became Democrats. So a lot of interesting stuff out there that we're working on. Please check us out. Let us know what you think. Subscribe, and help us get out there.
All right. Well, that was Stan and Salaam here on the Paycheck Away. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Paycheck Away.
Thanks so much, everyone. Peace. I can't read.